Hey guys, good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar. This is Deepak and hope all of you can hear me. Just a quick audio check. If you can send in your responses in the question window or in the chat window, that would be great. Can you all hear me? Okay. Uh, Thanks, Somashekar. I hope others can hear me as well. So let's quickly get started. I understand it's an afternoon slot for this particular webinar. Um, I'm sure you guys have had lunch and it's a difficult time for holding someone's attention. So I'll be very brief in what we cover since it's only 1 hour duration, this particular session. And the way we would cover this is first, we'll quickly look at the cloud computing industry in general. How is it shaping up? What are the companies involved? What are the opportunities for both enterprises and small and medium businesses, as well as most importantly, you as a professional, right? So we'll look at the industry, in specifically cloud computing. We'll look at what other technologies are impacting cloud, apart from just platforms like AWS and Azure. And we'll look at the career opportunities and the industry growth that we have witnessed in the last couple of years and that we would witness in the next few years as well. And finally, we'll look at how Great Learning and Great Lakes can help you in becoming a solid cloud professional, right? So we'll look at the program that we offer and discuss specifically about what you will learn in the program and what are the eligibility criteria, the skills that you would gain after completing the program, and so on, right? So let's get started. Right. So if you look at the last 5 or 10 years, let's say to simplify, if you look at this particular millennium from the year 2000 onwards, you see a lot of transformative changes, right? In fact, a lot of revolutionary changes. What I mean here is you can think about how smartphones took over our entire lifestyle, right? And not just lifestyle, the way we work and communicate with each other. You could also think about how storage and hard drives became cheaper in the last 10 to 15 years, right? You could look at how companies like Amazon or Microsoft Azure, specifically their cloud businesses, really ramped up after 2009 and 10, right? You could think about technologies like containers, which developers are using these days to deploy their applications for various particular requirements, right? You could also think about the generic hardware revolution, not just in terms of smartphone or hard drive storage, but also in terms of the internet bandwidth that you have available, right? The network's proliferation. Today we are talking about gigabytes per second of speed, right? When you talk about broadband, or even when you talk about wireless networks, we're talking about 5G now. Leave aside 4G, right? So if you look at the last 10 to 15 years, the world has changed a lot. And for all of us here, as far as technology professionals are concerned, and even for business professionals, the technology infrastructure, the services available, and the way we work in general has changed a lot. Right from how you develop software to how you deploy it to where it goes, the nature of data centers, and basically how you consume information technology has changed dramatically, right? And it's really a collection of multiple advancements, multiple changes that have come in through. So the basic point that I'm trying to drive here is why cloud now, right? And why cloud computing in the last 5 to 8 years, and why not before that, right? If you look at the idea of cloud computing, it's not a new technology. It's not a new revolutionary idea that has suddenly changed everything, right? The idea of cloud computing has been there for a long, long time, right? Specifically, it has been there for more than 50 years now, half a century, right? So that's a really long time. And one thing that comes to our mind is mainframes. When you think about machines or technology that is as old as 50 years, right? If you imagine the world 50 years ago, you would think about, hey, where have we come now, and what is the amount of advancement? So the concept of cloud is not new. The concept of utility computing is not new. It's a really old concept. But what has happened is, due to multiple suitable factors, due to multiple technology advancements that contribute, to helping realize the vision of cloud computing, cloud has happened just recently, right, in the last 10 years. Now, if you look at the companies also, they have evolved, right? Companies have evolved over time, and businesses, you do not have to think about IT companies, right, whose core business is to provide IT services to other companies. I'm talking about all the other set of companies which are not IT companies, right? So for them, managing IT infrastructure, managing IT personnel, either software or hardware, networking professionals, all of the IT expenditure is really a burden, right? It does not add to their core business advantage. It does not add value to themselves as a non-IT company, right? So companies want to spend less and less time wrestling with the servers, looking at their IT infrastructure, and they really want to focus on their core business. And this is what exactly cloud enables them to do, right? Cloud allows companies to not really worry about where is the underlying infrastructure, what is the exact data center that their application is sitting on, right? When exactly will a copy of my database be made, and so on, right? It's a lot of hassle that goes away from you as a non-IT company. So effectively, if you also see from a customer perspective, as a customer, if you are using, for example, a ride sharing service like Ola or Uber, you really won't bother about, hey, how is Uber deploying its application, right? If you do not get a cab for about an hour or two, when you really need it, you will be frustrated as a customer, and you will not give discounts to Uber if they come back and tell you, hey, our cloud servers were down, our infrastructure was down, because it's really difficult to manage it, right? So can you give us some brownie points? You would not, as a customer, right? You will be still angry and probably not go back to Uber, right? At least not in a week's time. So as a company, you don't get any points for using servers. All that the customer is worried about is, are you able to serve them, right? So you only get points for serving your users, right? That's the harsh truth. So cloud helps businesses do exactly what their core business is, and not really worry about the infrastructure, right? Uh, Moving forward with this particular idea, right? So, like I said, cloud is enabling multiple companies, and these are just very few examples of the type of companies that are using cloud infrastructure, right? So most of these are startups. What you see in front of the slide, right on the screen now. Most of them are startups, and the top two rows that you see are startups leveraging AWS, right? And the bottom three companies that you see here, right? LogDNA, Acast, and TrueRating, these are companies leveraging Azure, right? So if you go and read up on AWS and Azure case study centers, these are examples of companies that are using cloud computing to build something or the other, right? And when you do that, when you use cloud to build either your application or your data stack, you are really focusing all your energy in building your product and application, and focusing on your user, right? And that gives you a huge advantage in terms of what your business outcomes are, and how do you serve your customers. So Slack is an example, Airbnb is example, right? Lyft is a solid application, right? LogDNA is again an application. Now we will not go into what each of these application does, because that's not what we intend to understand. The intention of these examples is to let you know that not just big enterprises, not just small businesses, but really, very young startups are using cloud computing as their underlying infrastructure, and they are using cloud, you know, for ease of deployment of their applications and data, and they can really service customers all around the globe, right, with a flip of a switch, even if they do not have any data centers owned by themselves, right? So Airbnb is a famous example. Slack again is a classic example, and I'm sure many of you might be using it for either enterprise or no independent project messaging, right? So multiple companies are using cloud computing. Okay, let's look at how the revenue and the size of the industry has grown over time, right? So we will not go into each of these numbers here, but the essence of showing you all of these numbers is to give you a high level idea as to how the cloud industry has shaped up, right? So if you look at the top left box here, which says $162 billion, that is the estimated cloud spend by the next 2 years, right? 2020. Right? So it's over $150 billion plus industry. That's roughly almost the size of the Indian IT industry, right? Overall. So a lot of money is going to go into the cloud based technologies and cloud companies, and people will use it in different forms and shapes. If you look at the top right side, 85% of the companies are using clouds. Now we are saying multiple clouds here. So almost all the companies are using not just one cloud platform, but more than one, right? They are also on AWS, also on Azure, right? They also have a private cloud as well as a public cloud being used for their purposes. So the question now is whether you should move to cloud or not, but really how would you leverage cloud computing services? And usually the answer is, hey, you need more than one cloud computing platform because you have different types of workloads, because you have different types of requirements and so on, right? So and finally, if you look at the middle row here, if you look at the first two boxes, AWS and Azure, with their market penetration and the market share they have, are clearly the two leaders in cloud computing as far as the top players are concerned, right? So it makes sense for you as an aspiring cloud professional to learn these two particular platforms, right? You can start with either of them, but and you can still be just with one of them, but learning, top two platforms really gives you an alternate perspective that, hey, AWS is not the only cloud provider, or Azure is not the only cloud provider out there in the market, right? So it's always good to have an alternate perspective as far as technology is concerned, because tomorrow, guess what? If you become an architect and if your CIO or CEO put forwards a question, hey, why AWS, why not Azure? You really won't have an answer if you just knew AWS, and vice versa, right? So AWS and Azure are clear market leaders, and it's always a good idea to learn multiple platforms. So you would come back and ask me, hey, all of this is fine, the numbers look really fancy, this is all great, but is it happening in India, or is it just a global phenomena, right? Is it just a global trend? The answer to that particular question is yes, this is happening in India as well. And this has been a consistent trend. It's not just over the last 1 or 2 years. Even beyond 2015, if you see, the number was quite less, but from 2015 to till date, it's almost 3.5 years now. The growth has been consistent. It has been linear, which means the market is growing rapidly, right? So by 2020, we look forward to a $4 billion market, and that's nearly 3 times the growth that has happened in the last 4 years, right? So this is happening in India as well. Cloud computing is being adopted both by service industry, which is largely what the Indian IT sector is, and also by the product-based companies, right? And that also boosts the Indian startup scene, right? When you have companies, which do not have the upfront obstacle of, buying IT infrastructure and doing capex or capital expenditure, right, for IT, people really focus on innovative applications, and they know that, hey, there is a public cloud provider where I can go and really host my application, and not just about hosting, but really about multiple managed services, like even machine learning and AI models that you can directly consume from the cloud, right? So that's what's happening is in India as well, and the market is growing exponentially. Now, what is growing? When we say the market is growing, right, you would want to go a step further and ask me, hey, you say it's growing, and I can see that in the chart here, but which platform is exactly growing, right? So all of us know there are multiple cloud providers. It's not just AWS or Azure, but there is Google Cloud, there is IBM Cloud, right? Oracle Cloud, Alibaba Cloud, and so on. And in fact, I started my cloud journey with IBM Cloud. It was not called IBM Cloud then, right? They've called it SoftLayer, they've called it Bluemix, they've called it n number of items. So IBM has this tendency of changing nomenclature and rebranding stuff. Um, so it's quite a confusing scene as far as the names are concerned, but yeah, there are multiple players in the cloud arena as well. So like I said, the top two players have been AWS and Azure, and AWS had the first mover advantage as far as the cloud industry is concerned. They really launched one of their first services, right? The S3 service back in 2004 and 5. The thought paper was floated in 2003. So from nearly last 1.5 decades, AWS has been there in the cloud ecosystem. Azure also launched about a decade ago, and it launched with a different model, right? When AWS launched it, it launched as an infrastructure as a service. Azure was more of a platform as a service, right? More of a packaged offering. And Google Cloud, Google, for all its whatever godforsaken reasons, has its own niche and has picked up lately with its selected services, right? So Google is really great with things like machine learning and containers and Kubernetes and all of those kind of services. Azure is wonderful with IoT and again package services on a platform level, and AWS has more than hundreds of services that you can really pick up from. So AWS is really growing fast, right? Azure is also picking up. In fact, if you look at the last 4 or 5 quarters, Azure has seen a higher Q and Q growth, right? In back-to-back years than AWS, right? But overall, AWS is the leader, and Google Cloud is really picking up. If you consume YouTube or any other social media channel, you would see that Google has started putting out these advertisements for its cloud platform, right? That's new. That is something that Google has not done traditionally, but it has started doing so in the attempt of raising awareness, right? So if you were to look at the top three cloud platforms, it would be AWS, Azure, and Google, and all of them are growing positively as far as the last year is concerned, right? And this will happen. This will continue to happen in the next 2 to 3 years for sure. And there are niche cloud offerings, for example, Alibaba Cloud, which is really small on a global scale, but it is picking up pace as far as Asia Pacific is concerned, and they're about to launch their new data centers in Mumbai as well as Sydney, if I'm not wrong, right? So Mumbai, definitely, they are about to launch a data center, and there's another data center coming up either in Singapore or Sydney for Alibaba Cloud, right? So there are smaller cloud providers which are also picking up pace gradually, right? So one fact is really established here, that almost everybody is using cloud in some or the other form, and this is a kind of distribution for you to understand what kind of cloud deployment model are people using. So 96% of the respondents are using cloud, and right, so if you look at how many of them are using public cloud, it's almost everybody again, right? 92% people, and again 75% people are also using some or the other form of private cloud, and hybrid is an amalgamation of both of these in a use case dependent fashion, right? It's not a very trivial term to understand, but let's focus all our energies on just the public cloud market for now. And the fact here is almost everybody is using public clouds, right? Either of these that you saw on the earlier slide, right? VMware, of course, is used to create private cloud, as IBM Cloud and Azure Stack as well, right? Apart from what they offer on public clouds, right? So of course, growth is happening. The market is picking up. There are a lot of opportunities, and what this particular chart here reinforces is, if you look at the green section here from 2013 to 2016, this green section has been coming down, right, gradually. Okay, so the green section represents the volume of traditional data center, the number of traditional data center services available and deployed, right? So 76% in 2013 has come down to 63% in 2016, right? Uh, so this is the scope of advancement for public or private cloud, right? So there is a lot of scope still pending, especially in India, and two-thirds of companies globally still use traditional data centers. And unfortunately or fortunately, that number is large in India. So there's a lot of scope, where cloud will fill up this particular space, and hence the growth is quite robust. continue to, is poised to stay in the next few years as well. Okay, so this is just again another statistic as to what kind of adoption people have, the adoption trend in general across different deployment models of cloud. So public, private, and hybrid are really just different ways how you would implement cloud. But what I would take away from this particular slide here is the growth in general. If you look at the last particular figure, any cloud has been more or less consistent and has grown, right, over the last multiple years. So that gives us a lot of confidence into this particular industry vertical, right, cloud, or even a horizontal technology ecosystem. Right. So now that we have understood and established that the cloud, industry in general is growing, now that there are multiple opportunities as far as aspiring professionals like you and me are concerned, if you were to become a cloud professional, what is it that that you really would want to learn? And is cloud just about a bunch of hardware entities and just a set of network that you connect together and consume it remotely, right? Is it just about that, or is cloud much more? Does it affect multiple technologies, right? So the answer is yes, right? Cloud is much more than just compute, storage, and network. And cloud evolution is also allowing other technologies to evolve, because it enables a lot of technologies on different fronts. So if you look at multiple companies, there are companies just selling APIs, right? So for example, Paytm recently launched their Paytm Cloud service, right? So what is Paytm Cloud? Paytm Cloud is uh, an infrastructure, a platform, and a set of APIs that you can consume to create applications like Paytm, right? Basically, you can create fintech applications using Paytm Cloud, right? So what Paytm has done is they have used their particular expertise that they kind of built while creating a huge application like Paytm, that serves millions of users. So it's a solid application. So they have used that particular expertise and packaged it, and they are now ready to offer it to multiple people outside their organization, in the form of APIs and libraries, right, to create new applications, right? So new methods of software delivery have evolved. They are evolving with each day, and people are consuming these to build applications very rapidly. So you have APIs and libraries from Paytm. You can host it either on their cloud itself, or you can host it on, let's say, some other public cloud or even a private cloud, right? So you are not worrying about multiple libraries and how multiple methods work, right, through APIs. You're not worrying about the infrastructure. All you're worrying about is your business logic, right? Your user, right? What do you want to create? Who will use it, and how is it supposed to function? That is all you should be really worried about, right? Your core business concern. So that's one aspect that cloud is helping evolve. There are other aspects like containers and microservices, right? Another hot term. When people think about containers, they really think about Dockers for most of the time. But there are multiple container platforms available in the market, right? If you're a systems guy, you would know about Linux containers, LXD, which stand for Linux containers, or LXC as well, which is a precursor to LXD. There are CF groups, which are really the ancestors for containers, and so on. There is CoreOS, there is Rocket containers, and so on. So there are multiple entities that are evolving, and containers and microservices have become architectural tools, deployment tools, to re-architect, refactor, and revisit your application. I'm sorry, not refactor, but re-architect your application, and see if a legacy application can be, uh, recreated in a sense, right? And you can deploy an application through virtual machines or through containers, which are, lightweight, independent, and isolated processes that you can really use as a DevOps guy or as a deployment person, right? Even as a developer. We won't go into much of the details, but containers and microservices is another area that cloud has helped evolve. There are other examples like analytical databases and edge computing. We are now talking about data lake, right, instead of just data stored in databases. So you will keep hearing multiple terminologies every now and then that people tend to use, but in simple words, it's really an evolution of what we have been doing, with every passing year with each of these concepts, right? And cloud really impacts all of these technologies, and vice versa. All of these technologies also are available through cloud to help you build stuff, right? So naturally, people who know these skills, people who know these hot technology areas are obviously in demand. And this is just really an example to give you an idea of, people get higher salaries when they know, in demand stuff. It could be machine learning, AI, it could be cloud computing, it could be, just DevOps for many companies, whereas it's not a new technology in general. It's again a philosophy like agile. But really, if you know something which is in demand, you will be, offered a higher compensation, and you are in a position to negotiate your next, great transition. So like I said, there's really a lot more to cloud than just infrastructure. So any aspiring cloud professional should ideally aim to learn, not just AWS or not just Azure, but also things like Docker, really like containers in terms of concepts. Docker is just one example, but you should aim to learn containers. You should aim to learn, platforms that are available to people for development. You should aim to learn big data, microservices, DevOps on cloud. Traditional DevOps is gradually, or will gradually go out of phase, because now Google is talking about no ops, and things like OpenStack, just to get a taste of private cloud, right? Because less than 4 to 5% companies use OpenStack globally as compared to public cloud. But OpenStack is a fantastic piece of cloud operating system, or a packaged software that you should learn before learning any public cloud infrastructure. So cloud is much more than just compute, storage, or network, right? So you should aim to learn, if not all, but most of these technology areas as an aspiring cloud professional and architect. So these are some of the skills that are in demand, the top 5 skills that employers and hiring managers and leaders have consistently conveyed to us, and many other organizations, that hey, this is what we want from people who are going to apply for a cloud architect or a very senior position. Now, of course, you might not know all of this, but it's really a great time in the industry to upgrade yourself and upskill yourself, and try to get as many of these skills as possible as a mid-senior, as a senior professional. One of the it's just a very common sentiment in the industry, because if you observe LinkedIn, right, if you observe the number of updates that people really do on LinkedIn, every other day I see 4 or 5 people posting themselves as AWS solutions architect, right? Either they've cleared a certification through AWS or completed a course, and these are some of the folks, they're just out of college, right? And they're really young, even like 4 to 5 years of experience. Calling themselves solution architect is a new thing, right? It was not there in the industry, and architects were really senior people. When I say senior, I do not mean in terms of age, but in terms of exposure, right? What are the aspects that you would know about technology? You would have worked on multiple projects, multiple domains, and apart from technology expertise, you will have domain expertise, right? At least in one domain. So companies which are hiring are wary of this, and they do not want to hire people who are just paper certified. Certifications are great. They're absolutely useful and wonderful to have, but they will satisfy one hiring filter or criteria for you, and most probably you would just get your foot in the door because you have a certificate, but you will not get any job just because you have a certificate, right? Once the interview starts, your experience takes over, and even if you have a certificate, I have seen multiple people, I've interviewed multiple people personally. They can't build solutions really. They have certifications, they know what services are available, they know how EC2, for example, or S3 or Kinesis or Athena functions, but given a use case, they are unable to combine multiple services, find out what to use, and stitch it into a single solution, right? That is what is lacking, and that's the certification crisis, right? The paper certification crisis that people are facing in terms of hiring. So you should aim to learn by doing. You should, aim to learn more than one skill, aim to solve problems, build solutions, and don't just configure pieces of software, right? Solution building is always multidisciplinary, and that is why architects who know this, this art are really valuable. And certifications and courses that are tailored around certification will teach you how things are supposed to work. Okay, but in real life it doesn't work that way. Things will fail, and you should, build things to learn how things fail, right? Unless you build something, you would not know, right? So there are multiple courses out there which will teach you, hey, how is this service supposed to work, or this particular technology supposed to work. That's great, but in real life it doesn't work that particular way, right? So the expertise that you develop by failing again and again while building stuff is what companies will pay you for, right? And is what will make you a valuable architect, right? So that's our vision when we talk about, cloud, when we design this particular program. We'll talk about the program specifically, but let me take a pause here, right? I've been speaking for some time now, and let me have a look at the questions window if there are any questions at this particular point in time. I really hope people are not asleep, and they're still, listening to me, and hope we have questions. Guys, we can take any quick questions. Okay. Thanks, Akash. So Akash is asking, what are the minimal skills to learn cloud computing? So Akash, in terms of minimal skills, we would expect that you at least have a first degree in a technology related, domain, ideally computer science and IT, so that you understand, things like databases and operating systems and so on, right? So at least a first degree is required, and you should understand basic concepts like, what is a network, what is an IP address, what is a system shell, system commands, and so on, right? You need not be expert in all of these, but really having these basics in place will help you get started, right? Does that answer your question, Akash? Okay, wonderful. Thanks, Akash. Right. So Mohsin says, how this program is beneficial to me to work as senior software developer. Mohsin, it really depends on your motivation, right? So if you're working as a senior software developer, and if you have a requirement through your project that, hey, tomorrow our application will move to cloud, or we need to really recreate our application completely on cloud to make it cloud native, you might have an incentive to learn cloud computing, right? So it will definitely help you if you want to become a cloud native developer. In all honesty, cloud does not really change how you create software entirely, but some nitty gritties will always change, right? Whenever there is a new technology. So it depends on your motivation, and certainly learning cloud will help you, because whether all of us like it or not, tomorrow things are going to move to cloud, and as a developer you will have to understand, how do I, connect to a database which is completely on cloud and not in my internal data center, right? On a similar lines, you will have to learn how to embed, a machine learning model or an artificial intelligence, algorithm into your source code, so that your application is AI enabled, right? So I hope you understand through this example, and that's why learning cloud will help you, and it also depends on your motivation. Mohsin, does it make sense to you? I hope I was able to answer your question. Sudhakar, is there a classroom course coming up? Sudhakar, as of now, it is a completely online program, right? So as yet, we do not have a classroom version, but in future we may, right? But as of now, no. Okay, so Navdeep has a question. Navdeep, for your question, right? You do not, having a programming background definitely helps, but if you wanted to transition into a role such as cloud operations engineer or a cloud administrator or a cloud pre-sales consultant, you would not really do programming, as far as on the cloud is concerned. So if you are aware of basics in place, like system administration and Linux and basics of operating systems and networks, you can get started to learn cloud computing, and you can do so either through our program, or you can first browse around and look, try to understand what cloud is, and then get started, right? But you can absolutely get started without any programming background. That should not be a constraint, right? But obviously you will not be able to transition into a programming related role, and I don't think that is the intention either, right? Navdeep, does that clarify your thoughts? Okay, okay. So it should not stop you from pursuing cloud computing. In fact, most of the folks that you see updating on LinkedIn or any other platform, they are not programmers, right? They call themselves solution architects, and they are not programmers, believe me, right? Some of them might be. I'm not saying all of them are not, but most of them are not, right? And uh, you know interestingly, for many people, the incentive of learning cloud computing is to move away from programming related jobs, and to take up a much more administrative and ops kind of role, right? That's a primary incentive. Okay, so I hope I answered all the questions here. So because I don't see any more questions here, okay, Sudhakar has another question. Programming language is most sought in any job profile along with cloud technologies. Does the projects involve any programming language? All right, Sudhakar. So at Great Learning, we have the PGPCC program, which has about about 10 courses, and there is an additional developer track that you can pursue, right? There is an additional developer track that you can pursue. So if you, and that's an additional credential, right? And you will have to spend some extra time doing that. So if you do that, you are free to program in any language, right? And there will be projects in the developer track, not otherwise, which will need programming language. So you can code in .NET, you can code in Python, you can code in Java, right? But that is a separate credential that you can complete along with PGPCC, right? But within PGPCC, you really don't need any specific programming language to do your projects, right? They're more about cloud and the services that they offer, and how would you architect them. Sudhakar, does that help you clarify your doubt? Okay, wonderful. All right, so let's move on to understand what is the program that we are offering through Great Lakes and Great Learning, and how it might help you, right? What are the things that you will learn, and what can you aim to achieve post the program, right? Right. So the PG program in cloud computing, that's what we call the program, right? It's a PG program because we expect a first degree for all the applicants, right? Ideally a technology related degree. And because the program courses are at a PG level, right? It's called a PG program, but it's not a master's or a full-time postgraduate program, right? It's a 6-month executive program for working professionals like you and me. The program is designed for professionals who want to become architects, right? So some of you might have some understanding of what architects need to know, the frameworks, the architectural patterns, some of the technology items, and so on, or people who really want to get started afresh, right? So this program is designed for those kind of audience. It's a combined online format with live mentored learning. So every week you are assigned an instructional content. These are recorded video sessions that you're supposed to learn from. And every weekend you have a live mentored interaction, right? It's about 2 hours every week for the next 6 months whenever you start studying with us. And the purpose of these mentor sessions is to reinforce what you have learned in terms of concepts, and do two things, right? One, clarify your conceptual doubts and questions, because you would have doubts while you're learning throughout the week. So clarify those so that you understand the concept clearly. And second is discuss use cases, right? Discuss how you would apply a concept that you learned last week, right, or throughout the week. So because it's a mentor session, the idea is to not teach you each concept from scratch, because that's not practically feasible. That's what you're supposed to do during the entire week, right? During the mentor session, we clarify your concepts and doubts, and we discuss use cases, because as an experienced professional, you also have a lot of expertise in what you have done before starting, or before starting to learn with us. So you would want to discuss, hey, if I learned items X, Y, Z, I think this might be the use case. These might be the applications, right? So you discuss that with the mentor, and the mentor discusses that with all of you. In fact, all the class, like the entire class, right? So collectively, people in each of our batches represent more than 300 years of experience. So the idea is to extract as much value as possible from these 300 years of experience for each one of you, right? So that all of us can learn from each other. And of course, the mentor is an industry expert. The mentor will drive the session, but the aim is to keep it really interactive and participate in the session as industry leaders in their own right. So all the participants are in their own rights industry leaders, and they contribute to the entire learning experience. And this has been found to be one of the most promising aspects and the most sought after aspects of PGPCC, right? Peer-to-peer learning. And finally, of course, you get certification from Great Lakes Institute of Management, which is one of the top institutes in the country, right? Who will you learn from? You learn from people who are working in the industry. All of us here have a side thing to do. We are not full-time teachers, so we work in the industry. We learn from the good and the bad, and we bring that particular wisdom to you, right? So you have people who have been former chief architect at Dell. You have people from Microsoft. You have people from Payback. You have people from Great Learning itself, right? Teaching you some of the other set of concepts, right? So you really learn from people who have worked on cloud and otherwise, and these are the people who create content and who do the mentor sessions. And there are obviously, this is just a representative list. There are other mentors as well, but just to give you kind of an idea of who your faculties are and who you will be interacting with. But this is just an indicative list for you to get a sample and understanding. Now, what will you do in the program? You will do a lot of things. You will learn a lot of concepts. I'm not going into a laundry list of concepts. I'll just give you an idea of what your journey might be at a very high level. But essentially, during 6 months of your PGPCC with Great Lakes and Great Learning, you will just build stuff. Okay, you will just solve problems through labs and projects. We do not have any other evaluation component. We will not give you a multiple choice quiz and ask you to solve and give you marks. We will not give you a theoretical question to solve. We will not give you any other non-hands-on evaluation item. So we just do labs and projects. There are many of them, and on an average, each month you will have to solve 3 problems, right? 2 labs and a project, right? That's a lot for a lot of people. In fact, people have come back to us and said, hey, this is too much, I can't keep up with it. But it's really a good problem to have, right? So that's the testimonial that people have given. So essentially, you will keep building stuff for 6 months during PGPCC. So what will you learn? This is at a very high level, right? This is not a syllabus. This is not a detailed curriculum. This is not a list of all the concepts that you will learn. This is just to make you understand how is the progression of your learning experience throughout the program. So if you were to divide it logically, what would you do, right? So in the very initial phase, as soon as you enroll, we assign you a pre-work. Okay, it's a preparatory work. It's a set of carefully curated resources to get you started with cloud computing, right? That is really phase 0. This is not when you actually start learning from us. Phase 1 is when you start learning from us, from the mentors, from the recorded instruction content that we have, from our labs and projects, right? So phase 0 is really for you for self-study, right? This is something that you need to complete before phase 1 starts, which is typically during the first week of your program, right? After you have completed the pre-work, there is a foundations phase. It's really just, one course, which will set your foundations in place as far as cloud computing is concerned. And you will learn things like virtualization, service models, deployment models, cloud attributes, service taxonomy, etc. Right. So those are the first two basic phases of your learning journey in PGPCC, right? Phase 0 and phase 1, which is pre-work and foundations. Once you've completed foundations, you get into the nitty-gritties of public cloud platforms, right? Both AWS and Azure, and that is phase 2, right? Where you get to know the core services. When I say get to know, it doesn't mean just reading up on it. It actually means working with all of these, right? So core services and managed services on both AWS and Azure, right? So we do not cover, each and every laundry list of items on AWS and Azure, but you really cover what is important. And even for people who have, our participants have, cleared certifications from AWS, and they are ready to do so by the 4th month into the program because they've learned the managed and core services, right? So core services are, for example, the organization of the entire public cloud platform, what's the compute, what's storage, networking, and so on, right? And managed services really encompass multiple things like, relational databases, real-time querying, Athena, Kinesis in case of AWS, and web application frame firewalls, and so on, right? WAF, which was a recently added service. And then in case of Azure, you have, identity, security, Active Directory services, and so on. So we cover all of those through a set of courses. This is not just one course, it's a set of courses, but we can easily categorize and imagine it as being phase 2, right? The next step of your learning. Phase 3 is what I like to call Cloud Plus Plus, is where apart from what you have learned in AWS and Azure, as far as core and managed services are concerned, you learn other tangential tech areas. I hope you remember that we saw in a particular slide that what are the other areas cloud is impacting and vice versa. So you will learn hot technologies like containers, specifically Docker. You will learn big data, both of its aspects, right? Infrastructure and analytics. You will learn DevOps only on AWS specifically because this is a cloud related program. So we will not, dive into how would you do DevOps on premises, because then you can do pretty much everything on premise. But that's not the agenda of this program, right? So we will look at how do you do DevOps on AWS. Of course, you can do DevOps on Azure as well, right? And we will visit the all important concept of microservices. If you were to pursue this particular program, you would, easily come to understand that we have some of the best content on microservices, right? And finally, in phase 4, towards the end of your program, you start from the 4th month itself, and you work on a real life like problem for 12 weeks, right? It's a team project. It will include all the phases, right from asking questions when given a problem, which is basically your consulting experience, to the final deployment phase where you need to deploy your solution and present it to a panel of experts, right? And all of this will happen in 6 months. All of this will happen through multiple courses. And it's really an intense journey that you can look forward to if you happen to decide to pursue the PG program in cloud computing, right? And while we do not guarantee placements, because it doesn't make any sense whatsoever to guarantee placements for mid-career or senior professionals, because that's not how transitions happen, right? At mid or senior level, we do, help you in terms of understanding what other people might have done through experience sharing, right? We do a cloud career keynote. We also look at your CV and suggest improvements on a case-by-case basis, right? This is participant driven. So we will not reach out to each and every individual for their CV review and all of that, because not everybody is interested, right? That's the harsh fact. So it's a participant driven initiative. So people who reach out to us for one-to-one mentoring session, for a one-to-one CV review, we definitely do that, right? That's part of the program. And obviously you connect to your classmates, your industry, mentors and faculties who can also, help you connect with a potential opportunity. And we do share job opportunities as and when they come through our, industry partners. And most importantly, your classmates themselves will share multiple opportunities in their own companies where you can apply through us or directly, right? Either ways. So we definitely support you in potentially getting a career success. But obviously there's no guarantee about it. right? So that's pretty much from my side. That's pretty much the agenda of this particular webinar. We are open to questions again, and let me see if we have any questions here. Okay. So Akash says, I'm doing engineering specialization in electrical, but I am interested in cloud computing. I learned Java and Python languages. Is there any way? Please guide me. Uh, Akash, you can do engineering in any branch, right? So this is, this perspective is in India, but if you look at all the great computer scientists, all the great folks who have been Turing awardees, and right. So in US, North America, and even in Europe, people study things like physics, electrical engineering, electronics, mathematics, right? And then they do their masters in computer science, right? So I don't see this as a problem. This is actually an advantage for you if you decide to learn cloud computing, right? Which is basically one form of computing, right? Akash? So studying electrical engineering is actually an advantage and not a problem. Okay, that's what I wanted to tell you. And you can Google up multiple top universities. If you go to MIT, for example, they have a department for electrical engineering and computer science, and not just computer science, right? So there's a reason for that. Akash, does that help you? Okay, wonderful. Sudhakar, yes, that's the answer to your question. Lifetime access to LMS. Well, there is literally nothing like lifetime because the technologies will get obsolete, right? So there won't be any purpose of accessing it. But yeah, as long as you want it, you can access all of your resources on LMS, including video lectures. Yeah. So Mohsin, will you focus in each provided courses in deep? Mohsin, that's a very subjective question. If you have any particular specific concept to ask for, I'll be happy to answer. Right? It's a very abstract question. Okay, so Sudhakar, I don't know the source of your information, but that's not correct. Okay, let's not go into sources. Yeah. But that's not right, right? You can access it even beyond that. Yeah. In fact, we want all our alumni to stay connected with us even after the program, because as industry professionals, you can give back to the community and help us constantly improve the program and keep it as the best cloud program in the industry, right? Not just in India but globally. So even after graduation, as a Great Lakes alum, you will have a responsibility towards the program, right? So you will stay connected, Sudhakar, just to extend upon your point. Okay, on what basis the curriculum was framed? Very nice question, Sudhakar. So there are multiple aspects, right? So if you talk about a curriculum, so any curriculum should address, the skills gap, basically, right? The agenda of setting up any curriculum, even if you look at engineering or management or any other program, it really comes back from one, the industry, and second, the academia, right? The industry needs a set of skills in a desired profile, right? And they will list a set of things that they want people to learn and actually practice. So that's one. The other is academia. You can't learn a few things unless you have the conceptual background, right? I can't teach you containers in depth unless you understand operating system processes, right? Just to give you an example. So it really comes from multiple fronts. It comes from industry, it comes from academia, but it also comes from what is feasible in a given time frame. Because you can keep learning cloud computing all your life, there would still be concepts that you might not be an expert on. So to frame a program, for a 6-month timeline or a 1-year timeline, these are some of the things that you would take into account. Sudhakar, does that help you a bit? So it comes from the industry, it comes from the academia, it comes from time constraints and so on. But it's really towards what are the set of skills that people need to learn, and working backwards from there, right? In a nutshell. All right, guys. I think we have just 2 more minutes. I can take another question if there's any final question, um, and then we can close for today. Shankar, wonderful question. If you miss a class, you can look at the recording, right? So all aspects are recorded. Each and every session is available on the learning management system. So you effectively don't miss anything. But what I would encourage is not missing the live mentor sessions, because you can go back to the session and look at other people's questions, but you will lose the opportunity of asking that question, right? Your own set of questions. So everything is recorded, everything is available. But if you miss a live session, you won't be able to ask that question. Right, Sudhakar, right, I won't dispute that. So emerging trends are always subjective, right? It's not possible to include all the emerging trends. Realistically, it's always, theoretically, it is always nice to include as much as we need from a candidate's perspective. But if you look at the list of concepts that PGPCC is trying to inculcate and teach, if people learn that, that's more than enough, right? As far as cloud architects are concerned, right? Our agenda is to not make people IoT experts or MLAI experts, or even .NET or any other expert, right? So working backwards from what a cloud architect needs to know, we are trying to have this curriculum, and of course it's subject to revision. And tomorrow, if there's any critical skill that the industry thinks is missing, we'll definitely add it to the curriculum, right? And that's our agenda every day, by the way. Yeah. Sure. Thanks a lot, Sudhakar. All right, guys. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thank you, everyone, for joining in this afternoon. I hope what we discussed added some value in some or the other form to each one of you. And in case you decide to explore cloud computing, know more about the program or the organization in general, please reach out to us through our website or through the details in front of you. And I hope this 1 hour engagement was meaningful to you. Thank you very much, and have a good day.